Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the SheSuite. This is the podcast where we challenge traditional leadership narratives and explore the frameworks, mindsets, and strategies that elevate women into position of impact, influence, and power. I am your host, Sierra Johnson Belser, and I am excited today to have a conversation. Today's conversation is with a woman who has changed the way we think about leadership and not just what leaders do, but who they are. Dr. Stephanie Kirkland, I had to put that on there, is a business strategist and executive coach and founder of Identity Dynamics. She's the creator of Identity Centered Leadership, author of Identity 12 Lessons on Apologetically Owning Your Uniqueness, focus on the relationship between identity, presence, performance, and organizational impact. Now, when we met a few years ago at Sherm Linkage Conference, and that was the first time I had ever heard you speak, I thought this woman doesn't just teach leadership, she disrupts it. So I am so excited to have you on our podcast today. So welcome, Dr. Kirkland.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here and to have the opportunity for us to have great conversation.
Absolutely. So for the listeners who are new to you and your work, who is Dr. Stephanie Kirkland and what inspired you to build Identity Dynamics and Identity Centered Leadership?
I think that question can come all together with the work that I do. I mean, really, who I am and the work that I do flow hand in hand, and it really is about me understanding who I am and the impact of who I am in every role and responsibility that I walk out. I focus primarily on leadership as it pertains to businesses, organizations, leaders as unique individuals, and really getting people to the point where they're no longer dependent on the roles that they have and responsibilities to define who they are, but that they start with who they are so that whatever it is that they do is impacted authentically around how they show up and what that looks like. So that is my work. That is my personal work. And that is why identity dynamics exists, because I believe everyone needs to walk this out, whether it's personally or professionally. We all need to begin with us and through that understanding, then walk out where it is that we're going and what that means for our life.
And I love that so much because for me, having one of your sessions at Linkage, it was transformational. And I don't know if you and I have ever had this conversation, but after that first time that we met, I literally came back and quit my job. Like,
Wow.
I had had it enough with that particular organization that did not see my value or my worth, even though I was the brand of that company. And so it pushed me to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is something that I learned from you as well, and forced me to kind of do a career pivot, and forever grateful. So,
Yes.
one question that I have always wondered is who was Stephanie before you became an entrepreneur?
Before I became an entrepreneur, even before I went on this journey, I was a burnt out woman because I understood and was groomed and trained, whether that was through family, religion, societal norms, cultural context, that I had these roles, these boxes, these categories
Yep.
that I was responsible to walk out, and that it was all about the roles. It was never about me. That's who I was. And I was a woman who was determined to be great at those things, right? Great as the mother, the wife, the friend, the sister, the choir director, the Bible study teacher, whatever package I was taught that I was supposed to walk out. My focus was so much on the roles and responsibilities that I never took the time to investigate who I was and how I showed up, and understanding that it began with me, not the expectations of others of what they wanted or needed me to be, but that my gift to others was it beginning with me and then me taking on those roles and responsibilities through the lens and the context of my own understanding of myself, right? Not other people's understanding of what they expected of me because of a box that they had put me in. So I was that burnout woman. I was everything, every script, making sure that I was doing what everyone expected of me. And I was tired of it. I got burnt out. I remember saying to myself, is this it? Like, really, is this fulfillment? Is this really purpose? Is this, how I'm supposed to be showing up where I have no no way of navigating my own wants and needs, but it really is about everybody else. I mean, we're taught that it's not about you, it's not about you, it's about and I recalculated what that meant for me, and that recalculation has turned into this conversation around identity centered leadership. That leadership begins with us.
I love all of that because as a mother of 2 girls, I know that as women, we are raised to be the caretaker. We're raised to take care of a man, take care of our children, take care of our households, and do all those matronly things. And I am teaching my daughter how to show up in the boardroom. Like, I
Yes.
have taken her to board meetings with me. I'm showing her how to lead organizations, how to run your own nonprofit, and how to do things that really actually matter. Not that those other things don't matter, but
Yes.
when it comes down to moving through the corporate ladder, which is a dream and aspiration that they both have,
Okay.
they don't care that you know how to fold a load of laundry, okay? That's not what's gonna take us past the glass ceiling, so I'm so glad that you tapped into that for sure.
Yes. Mhm. Mhm.
So let's talk about your origin story, philosophy, and purpose, okay?
Okay.
So identity-centered leadership is a bold concept. What problem in leadership did you see that made you create it? And then what does it mean when you say that there is a disconnect between who leaders are and how they lead? Twofold question.
Yeah, the concept around identity centered leadership again began with my own journey of coming to the understanding that who I was and the roles and responsibilities that I was walking out were not congruent. There was no alignment in that. The roles and responsibilities was not coming from my greatness. It wasn't coming from my understanding, my uniqueness, my lens, my perspective, my values, my way of showing up and what that looked like. And as you know, being in corporate or any organizational structure, you're given a job description and you're told this is how you look, this is how you act, this is how you show up, this is what this means. And, as we do research, we understand that the context of that is centered on white, cisgendered males because those environments originally were not shaped or formed for us to be participants in, right? And so, what I have grown to understand, even not just women, but even men are held to these roles and standards and ways of showing up that does not tap in to who they are and what that means, right? So this conversation of identity centered leadership is really about who are you? What are your beliefs, your values, your truths, how you're showing up, your perspective, really doing almost like doing an archaeological dig on yourself, right? Because we're really not taught to investigate ourselves. We're really not taught to look at how we've been showing up and how we've been groomed. Is that really who I am, right? Or is that something that has been taught to me that I've never investigated? Is it trauma that is now navigating? And so then you have to add that neuroscience component, right? The understanding that our brain takes on that information, categorizes it, and really uses it. And this is the connection to leadership. It uses it for decision processing. It uses it for clarity. It uses it for our strength and our performance. It uses
Mhm.
it for how we engage with people. It uses it for how we have relationships, what we like and what we don't like, how we view wealth, how we view fear, failure, connections, collaboration. All of these things are connected to our identity. They're not connected to the job description. So I realized that there was this gap, right? I call it, we'll use identity gap just for our conversation. There was this gap between who someone currently is and who it is that they need to be in order to do the work that these job descriptions or leadership dynamics requires of them. And for a lot of people, when you do leadership development, we're focusing on communication, we're focusing on voice, we're focusing on strategy, right? So we have all of these skills, nothing wrong with it. All of them are powerful. I've gone to some fantastic leadership development, but there's no anchor to put this information on top of. So, what we end up doing in leadership development is assuming that who we are just navigates into these skills, right? And we never think, I mean, think about it. We never take into consideration that all of this training is done in a contained situation, but we actually do leadership outside of containment, in stress, in challenge, in issues of we're out in the world with these concepts, but we don't have an anchor. And so my work is the anchor. You anchor first who you are, your identity, then when you put the skill sets and all of that on top of it, you have a complete picture of truly what a leader needs to be as they show up in these spaces. And they have a way of understanding with that neuroscience piece, how that actually can be trained and developed to support what is actually being put on top of it as skill. So identity centered leadership is infrastructure to support leadership development so that they are not wasting money, which they are now. I hate to say it. They're retraining. They're still following the people that they've put in positions. They're still figuring out what, but I gave you all the skills. I gave you all, but you're not doing the job. Why? The anchor, the personal work, the identity work that actually anchors all of the other pieces so that people can show up as their greatest expression. So I know that was a long answer, but I wanted to kind of put all the pieces together for that.
No, it makes perfect sense because as I think back through organizations that I've worked for, they bought all the leadership books. We
Yeah.
had the book club meetings. They
Yeah.
even had the podcast about leadership, and leadership still wasn't being handled on an organizational level. And
Right.
there was still a lot of dysfunction within those organizations. So, everything that you said makes perfect sense. And
Hmm.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, how does identity influence leadership presence, resilience, and decision making?
It controls it
Mhm.
because who you are is how you do those things. And if you don't have the healthy context, or if you've never done the self leadership work to understand your beliefs, your values, your truths, your traumas, your cultural context, all of the things that make you who you are, if you don't really have a great concept of really what that is and what that looks like, all of those things, you might have a desire for them to be impactful in a certain way, but they will only be impactful based on how your brain and your synaptic connections are wired to engage with those pieces. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And so, decision making, fear might be controlling your decision making because of a circumstance that happened to you in your life, even though you've gone through strategy training. So, if you've never dealt with the fear, strategy is nothing but information, and your brain is going to go with the default. It's not going to go with the information. So if you don't do this work, I don't care how much training you get, your brain will always go back to the default. Yeah. Whether leadership or personal. And I know you know people just like that, like, well, why did you do that? We already talked about that. I don't know. I don't know why I did that. I know why you did that because you never worked on the default. You never did the identity work to support where it is that you wanted to go and what that looks like, right? So identity impacts everything. It is the infrastructure. It is the default. And if we don't do that work, whatever has already been constructed is what's controlling those contexts that you just gave me, all of it. And we can't talk people out of it. It's not transactional, right? Um, organizations are no longer transactional. That stopped with COVID. Now it's people want to show up. They want to know how they engage. They want connection. They want community. They want authenticity, right? They don't just want transactional dynamics. And, organizations can fight it all they want, but they will continue to get turnover, no return on their investment, the continued infiltration of leadership development training. I mean, even like what you were talking about with working with veterans, if this work is not done, they will go back to their default because they were what? In the military, communal. And now that they're veterans, they are no longer communal. You're telling them to focus on themselves. Their
Such a
default
hard
is
person.
communal. So
Absolutely.
now you're like, I want you to now to think about yourself. And they're like, think about myself. I've never had to. Now what do you want me to do? Right? It doesn't matter if it's abused woman who was a victim and now needs to be independent. You're saying now you're free. No, I'm not. I'm still the victim here.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? There has to be that work to change the anchor so that whatever you want to put in that person as they move forward can be instituted in their forward movement because the anchor is what it takes for them to shift. Is the transformation.
Now, I might be leading you into a soapbox question, and this was not a question I had on your sheet.
Please. I don't mind.
What are your feelings about the term a natural born leader?
That's interesting. I think we have natural tendencies, if that makes sense, that could fit into leadership boxes. But I do believe that leadership, there is a grooming and a skill set that goes along with leadership. But I do believe that we can naturally context because I have a spiritual context. I believe that there's purpose and destiny on the inside of all of us, and we do have leanings for purpose and where God would desire and have us to be. So like if you ask me that question, I'm going to go to the spiritual side, you know what I'm saying? So I believe that
Amen.
there is a spiritual context for us and how we show up. So I think those personality traits, our generational um family lineage, I think all of those things play into how we show up if we are that. But I think that's more of our leaning, but I still think the skill sets and the ways of engagement and those types of things need to be taught.
So, tell me what happens when leaders try to perform leadership versus embody leadership?
It works for a time,
Mm,
but then burnout comes, or because it's not embodied, it begins to be a chore. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I can go back to my own journey. I was doing the roles and responsibilities. I was doing what I was asked to do, but I wasn't fulfilled. It wasn't an embodiment for me. It was action. You know what I'm saying? It was responsibility, but I wasn't feeling anything in it. So it was work. But when it's embodied, it's who you are because you have truths that surround the context for your show up. There's beliefs that anchor what that means to you and how you engage. Your values are wrapped around what you do with that and what that looks like. Embodiment is really, I don't want to say effortless, but it's natural. You know what I'm saying? And performance, yeah, you can perform, but over time, you're miserable, you're not happy, you're frustrated because there's this resistance and tension, right? Because especially if you haven't done the personal work and you're performing, there's this tension between how you want to show up and what they want you to show up as. So
mm,
now you're going to work frustrated because you're doing what they're telling you to do, but that's not who you are. That's
that's
not
not
how you
working.
think, right? Like
Mhm.
it's not how you want to engage. And so you begin to feel blocked. You begin to feel that you need something different. You become miserable and you start wanting to go to work because you're not happy. And that's where you spend the majority of your time not happy. Who wants to live like that, right? So yeah, embodiment is a expression of your beliefs, values, and how you show up and what that looks like. Performance is I'm doing what you tell me to do, even though I might not agree. And that's not fun.
I think that when you look up burnout in Webster, your picture and that definition and description you just gave needs to be right there because I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are feeling burnout, but they don't know exactly what they're feeling or why they're
Mhm.
feeling that way. So, I think that that is crucial, and I think we have all been there. That's something we can all resonate with.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get burnt out with our own thing.
Yeah, and I even call that like it's almost like identity friction. You know
Ah,
what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? You're just rubbing up
Mhm.
against another identity that is just so unreflective, and it's very uncomfortable. And yes, I went to the burnout, right? I mean, I was like, okay, I have to stop everything because this is not coming from it's not coming from a rooted place. I'm just doing what I was good at it. And I know you're good at it too. It's not that you're not good at it. It's not like you're not good at performance, but it's not fulfilling
Yep,
and it doesn't hit the spot. You know what I'm saying? It's not a natural expression.
it's robot.
And that's the change. Yeah.
Mhm. You feel very robotic. You're just doing the routine, doing what you're told, but and you're inside your core, you know that you're missing something.
You're
Something is
missing.
not making you happy. And I think
Correct.
a lot of people have depression, but they don't understand how that correlates to your day to day. And when you're doing all the things, you're going through all the motions, but then at the end of the day, you're not fulfilled.
Yeah,
That's where
it's
the
miserable.
emptiness comes from.
Yes,
So,
very much
so,
so.
so how does identity-centered leadership drive better outcomes across culture, engagement, and retention? Because I know this is what the business owners want to hear.
It drives outcomes because people are now have the capacity to do the work that is required of them. It impacts your return on investment because now you have leaders who are embodying the work that they're called to do, and they're able to really step into it. It actually keeps, it's almost like having a leader whose identity is not congruent with the responsibility, but it might be still connected. Let's say it's still connected to needing to overdo something. Maybe you have a people pleaser, right? And they have not worked on that aspect of their identity and what that looks like. So, what it shows up as in the work is someone who always says yes, who never really finds the problem or the issue, who never speaks up when they need to. They're making sure that everybody is, happy and satisfied, but there's never no pushback. So now you're losing money because the one that you have asked to do a particular work can't do it because the identity of the people pleaser is still controlling their decisions, right? It's still controlling their relationships. It's still controlling their team meetings. You might have someone who's so used to doing things on their own. Let's just use a first gen, right? A first generational person, right? They're used to being independent. Don't have that type of structure. So what they might end up doing is micromanaging, or they might be overproducing, overdoing, so they're not able to release to the team so the team can be able to be a part of that context because of their context. So, when it comes to culture impact, when it comes to relationships, if you don't even do the work, there is no such thing as belonging. There is no such thing as inclusion. Because if you have not paid attention to yourself, how do you have the capacity to honor the uniqueness of someone else? So, this work of this infrastructure that is necessary, this identity work, controls your climate, it controls your culture, it controls change management, it controls return on investment, it controls team dynamics, it controls all of those things. You can diss people to death, right? But if that work, that's still information. And if that information has not been um what do you call pushed up against or being able to analyze who they are and what that means for their context, then you just have someone who knows that they're a direct communicator. Okay. How does that make you more like you see what I'm saying? So you
That's
can't
the thing.
you can't get away from it. You're trying to move somebody from middle management and they want to be in the C-suite. That's an identity shift. That's from someone who's what do you call it? A program manager to someone who's now a strategy thinker. They're no longer in the mix. So if you never do the identity work, you have a program manager in the C-suite who's supposed to be strategizing, but now they're micromanaging because they don't know how to take their hands off of it. So it controls everything. It controls how you make your money. It controls relationships. It controls every vein of an organization. And it's not hard to fix. It's just intentional. Because everyone is doing that work, it creates a climate that really shifts the trajectory of organizations.
You hit on so many things that we probably need 4 more podcasts to get through in just that one statement. Because I think about organizations that, they'll promote certain people because they were good in that specific role and they had the numbers in that specific role. But then when they take them out of that environment and put them in this other environment, they don't thrive.
Because their
And
identity hasn't changed.
and in the organizations that I work with, they're just like, well, why didn't Bobby thrive when we gave him this role? And I'm like, well, Bobby, first of all, you gave him no tools. You just pluck Bobby from this department, put him over here, and expected him to flourish with no tools, without the support that he needed to thrive. And then Bobby has always thrived in this because this is what he knows. Now Bobby doesn't know this. So what are you doing to fill in that gap? And then they're looking at me dumbfounded, like, well, we just automatically thought that the switch was going to turn on for little Bobby.
And the switch is identity work,
And I
right?
think that happens a
You have
lot with women too, though.
very much so. Everybody. It doesn't matter who it is.
Hmm.
That identity piece cannot be denied. People will go to whatever position you put them in doing the same thing they did in the other position because you have not taught them how to now what are the beliefs for this, right? Is who you are. This is kind of, and you've seen me do this, who you are and who you need to be. There's work in between those two positions, right? And
Hmm.
that in between is identity work. There has to be a shift into what is required for the next lens necessary for that person to thrive. And all they're going to do is just take program management up to the C suite. And I don't need a program manager up here. I don't, because you're going to just micromanage. You're going to be down there with the people. I need you up here with us creating strategy, change. I need you to, do vision. I need you to incorporate insights, but that's not what they're trained to do. So they need to be again trained, right? Remember, we said in the beginning of our conversation, we just assumed that leadership development is the pieces necessary, the skill set, but the identity is what is necessary for the skill set to work.
Good information. So this brings us to the portion about women power and identity, which I've loved to hear you speak about several times and probably just need you on record every day as I get ready for work.
I'm working on that.
Please, please do. So how does identity show up differently from women leaders? So especially those from marginalized backgrounds in particular, what kind of identity differences do women leaders have in their skill sets?
I think that's more leaning towards societal norms and cultural norms impact us in a different way, and we deal with a different type of biases in these environments, even from other women, even from other people, because we still in the back of our minds, right, have a cultural lens, have a societal lens, and an expectation that is totally different from the expectation that we have of men in these environments that was created for them and by them. So the impact of environment is so much different for us because not only are we dealing with environmental norms that weren't created for us, we're still dealing with people who hold on to societal and cultural norms outside of their work context, bringing them into the organizational environment, right? So you still expect me to be a nurturer when I really need to be someone who assesses and does things. So now you can't deal with me because you want to like me instead of respect me. So now there's an issue, but you can respect him and not like him. But you can't do that with me, right? So those norms are coming in, and what women and especially marginalized communities need to understand, which is what my doctoral work was around, is how do we decenter prototypical leadership norms and then normalize African American women's leadership modality. First, we have to acknowledge that we have our own leadership modality, which comes through our uniqueness and how we show up in spaces. And then, by normalizing that and understanding who we are and how we show up, and then owning that regardless of the environment and not feeling that we have to placate to it. That's really important. And really be okay that the environment not might not support us and stop looking at us as if we're the problem
Hmm.
or that we're the issue. I think when we take that weight off, it makes us it makes it easier for us to show up in our greatness and then look at the environment in a way that we need to be able to position ourselves to deal with it. I mean, that's the first, in my book, that's the first lesson. The room is crooked.
Uh,
Period.
yep.
So now what is your responsibility to the room through your greatness? You see what I'm saying? Don't expect the room to do what it ain't gonna do. We expect the room to shift, the environment to change. That's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to show up as you because that is why you're in that space, right? People have to learn to be able to accept difference. Unity is not everybody being the same. Unity is I'm bringing my uniqueness to the table so that we can get to a unified end. And I think once we understand and accept difference as a leadership strategy, and we redefine what unity is, it will help women in these environments. It will help women turn off their own expectations of another woman. We ain't even have to talk about the men. We can talk about women with women. We ain't even, just we ain't even got to go to the other place,
That
because we're
podcast
bringing those
episode
norms into
too.
the environment.
Listen. Well, as a very strong, dominant personality Black woman that
Mhm.
it has taken me all through my 30s. I had to figure out everything that you just said. That one, not everybody's going to like me, no matter how nice
Okay.
I am. And I think I'm a wonderful person and everybody should like me. But that is not a me problem, that is a you problem. And number two, because I am an African American female, they already have their narrative of who they think I'm supposed to be. And when I don't fit that narrative, you can literally see the come apart happen
Yes.
before your eyes.
Yes.
They can't figure out why I have the dialect that I have and that I speak the way that I do, the way I stand the way that I do, the way that I dress the way that I do. And it completely breaks them down to their core. And
Yes.
to see it happen, now I think it's hilarious. But in my 30s, I'd be like, but why would you think that I wasn't going to show up as this person? Like, what is going on in your mind to where you just automatically think that because I'm a Black female woman in my 30s that this is the way I'm supposed to show up? And to give and it's from women.
Yes.
It's not from my male counterparts. They can care less. They just want the job to get
They
done.
just want the job done.
But the other women in the spaces and the battles that I have had working with women over the years is just diabolical to me,
Yeah.
especially even now in 2025.
Yeah, most definitely. It's the and then again going back to the identity narrative, right? Of their own baggage. And that's why I say it's not your issue. It's
Mhm.
their baggage, it's their lens, it's their lived experience, it's their expectations, it's what they were groomed, their understanding of who black women are and how we show up. I mean, something as simple as say, oh, you speak so well. Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I speak well? I have this job. I have a doctorate. Why wouldn't I not speak well? You know, I went you know what I'm saying? It's like, where is that
Mhm.
coming from? And then you understand, oh, you've just not been raised around black people. Oh, wow, you have an understanding of black people that might come from television. Oh, you've never been around educated black women or you know what I'm saying? It's their lens that is controlling their ability to engage in a deeper and a more intentional way to see difference. And that goes back to my other conversation, right? If you have not done the work on yourself, how do you even have the capacity to see difference as a norm and not something that is against or an issue for you? Because you weren't, that's just not your personal identity in this environment. So again, it's not about roles and responsibilities. It's not about that I have this management job. Your identity says that I shouldn't be managing you. That part.
And that's
But
something
that's
you can
societal. That's cultural.
yeah.
That has nothing to do with the work or my qualifications. So you can't see that because of your identity. Do you see it?
Mhm. See it
Mm.
all the time. And we're gonna move right along.
To the next
Um,
one.
to the next question. Okay. What internal narratives do women most often have to rewrite to step into executive presence?
Say that again.
What internal narratives do women most often have to rewrite to step into executive presence?
You know what's beautiful about that? Everyone's different. That's the beauty of identity, right? I mean, all of us have packaging, right? That archaeological context, that dig. We all have to do that dig and that work because we're all so fantastically, wonderfully unique and different. It is the process is the same. The discovery process is the same, which we talked about at linkage. But what needs to be addressed can be different. You know what I'm saying? You might have to deal with a narrative that came from your childhood. I might have to deal with a narrative that came from high school. We're both dealing with a narrative that is pushing up against our presence, right? It's pushing up against our ability to walk in confidence and own who we are and how we show up. For someone else, it could be in a religious understanding of a woman in her place. We all have something that is pushing up against who it is that we need to become that is required for our next. We all have a narrative. We all have a script, a story that needs to be addressed. So the beauty is everyone's is different. And we have the ability to investigate what that is and shift so that presence is a part of our narrative.
And you just led me to my next question. So, how does working on your identity piece help you overcome that imposter syndrome that I know we love to talk about in linkage? And you, in your session, you kind of touched on that. So, how can we work on ourselves and our identity to silence that little person that likes to stand in our shoulder and tell us that we can't do things?
Well, to me, doubt and the conversation of imposter syndrome are two different conversations. One, I don't believe in imposter syndrome as the
Leading
concept.
you into this, please talk about the background of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, imposter syndrome was a controlled group of a certain number of women, white women under 35, around this conversation of imposter syndrome, which means really imposter syndrome means that I do not believe that I am worthy. And they connect it to familial upbringing if you see the research. And I'll send it to you so you can just have it. But um I don't feel worthy. I feel that I am an imposter. That's the word that they use. I feel that I shouldn't be here. And one day somebody's going to discover that I shouldn't be here. So, I mean, think about how loaded that is. Let's just talk about Black women. The majority of Black women aren't raised to not believe that they don't have the capacity to. And I know I'm generalizing, but it really is a true generalization because we understand and our lived experience says we have to work harder, we have to do more, we have to be better than anyone else. When we get a position, we earned it. We know we're supposed to be there.
Mhm.
Now, can doubt be a part of our narrative? Of course. That's an emotion. We can experience doubt or concern, but the narratives that really impact us in that way are environmental. They are not internally expressed in out. They're usually out in. So usually it is in our environment that is pressing up against us to make us think that we don't belong because of what's happening around us, not what's happening in us. Because 9 times out of 10, I promise you, we had to work hard to even get the opportunity and we are qualified to do the work. Does that make sense? So I'm just kind of bucketing it in that particular dynamic. So as a context, I think it's overused. I think it is something that people gravitate to because it's an easy way to express a feeling, but really, I think they don't go together. We don't have imposter syndrome. We have environmental narratives that tell us we don't belong, but we know we do. And are we impacted by that? Most definitely. It's very harmful and it's frustrating. But it is not imposter syndrome.
Walked right into that, and I love it. Because that was a profound moment for me when you said that, because, of course, we've heard that phrase used over and over again,
Right.
and then I was like, "You know what? She is absolutely right." So, yes, please send me that research so that I can dive into that a little bit more. So, what does unapologetic identity look like in leadership, and what does it cost?
There's a statement that every single woman that I did my research around made. And I asked them the question around their success because I made sure that I did research around women who were older, who were before diversity, equity, and inclusion. They were before belonging, they were before inclusion, but they were powerful and successful at what they did. And every single one of them said, I know who I am. and I'm willing to deal with the consequences of that. That's the answer. I know who I am, and I'm willing to deal with the consequences of who I am. That's the power of identity, right? It's if this environment can't handle me, this is not where I belong. We don't go, oh, wow, I need to change who I am so I will belong. It changes when you know who you are, how you show up, your beliefs, your paradigm, your strengths, your uniqueness. You're unapologetic about it. I can't be here any other way. If I come into the earth and I show up any other way than my greatness, I not only do myself a disservice, I do the environment a disservice. Because if you have a spiritual context, you believe that you are in places because you're supposed to be there to create impact, right? So, how dare I be less than who I have been created to be? How do I show up less than because of an environment that I have been created to impact? It was not created to impact me. Right? I'm not, what is it? I'm not a thermometer. I'm a thermostat. I set the temperature. I'm not regulated by the environment. I'm here to impact. I'm here to disrupt. And that doesn't mean cause chaos, but it does mean my presence impacts you in a way that shifts things. Right. So I don't adhere to anything other than that. We must be unapologetic. We must own it. And part of that is understanding that everyone is not meant to accept us. We are not meant to fit into every. There is a people called to us. There is a place I'm supposed to be. And when that is controlling the narrative, instead of you bending to environments, it shifts everything. Everything.
And I have had so many women throughout their career journey that were feeling stuck, were feeling unseen by their organizations and, you know, asking, well, what can I do so that I can get this promotion? I'm like, well, sometimes it's not the promotion that you need, not within that organization. The promotion is getting out of that organization into an organization that can value what you bring to the table. And that is your promotion in and of
Yeah.
itself. And getting them to see that and get out of that comfort zone is so hard, but it's so needed because once you escape from that pressure of almost needing that validation when you already have that self validation, but you were trying to get your validation from an outward source,
Yes,
it is a feeling, a lonely, lonely feeling.
it is.
um, I have been there, done that, and could probably write the book. And then once I released that validation need and released that organization, moved into my purpose, life as a whole, I got
Yes.
better at home. I was better at work. I was
Yes.
better in every aspect of life. So
Yeah. And it's almost like a football team, right? Have you ever seen where they're like, oh my God, that quarterback, he is so fabulous, but he does horrible with a particular team. But as soon as that running back or that quarterback gets to another team,
they take off.
man, but it's the same person. It's the same, but it was the environment, right? And if we can really own that narrative, this is just probably not where I'm supposed to be, or this is not the people I'm supposed to be around, or this is not the department that I need to be trying to advance in, or maybe this is not the directive for this particular season of my life. When we start doing it that way, instead of allowing the environment to control our narrative and really have that conversation, right? But again, that doesn't happen until we do the identity work.
Did that work with you? Okay, so let's talk about disruption because you brought it up. We're in a new era of work. So, what outdated leadership models are dying, and what do you see that is emerging?
There's so many beautiful models um, that are out there. I think there's so many beautiful ways of us to engage conversations around leadership, whether it's a style, right? Whether you're a servant leader or you're a authentic leader, a heart-led leader, human leader. I think those styles should be expressions of identity and not the opposite. Because a lot of times what we try to do is we try to aspire to a style of leadership instead of that style of leadership being an expression of who we already are. So when we don't do that work, we are looking for someone to tell us who we are. We're looking for a style to tell us who we are. But if we start with us, then those styles or ways of showing up or expressions of leadership, or whether it's a disc, a 360, whatever, all of these beautiful tools that we have to do leadership development work, I think that would be so much more impactful if the anchor is in place. That's my work, right? It would be so much more insightful. I use the example at your thing, like somebody thinks that they're a servant leader, but they're not. They're a tyrant, right? Because they haven't done the work, but you can't tell them they're not a servant, but everybody else knows they're a tyrant, you know? But because that work wasn't done for them to really get a pure assessment of who they are and how they show up and what that process is, which is individual and unique for everyone. That's why I don't necessarily ascribe to a particular way or leadership, way of engaging. I just think that there's certain things that are expressed through those trends that are important and valuable that we can honor and enjoy and appreciate the skill development through those things without them becoming the lens that everybody is. We are able to pull out what we need and leave what we don't.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for that. So now we're going to move into what I call the human algorithm moment, where we're talking about empathy, connection, and adaptability, which is my passion work.
Yes.
So how do you think empathy supports identity work, especially in leaders who are resistant to vulnerability?
You know, I think empathy is such a fascinating conversation because there's so much that is engaged with that. I think when we can be available, and you can also kind of touch it with emotional intelligence, right? I know my emotional context, therefore I'm have the capacity to pay attention to and see yours. Empathy is kind of like that, right? When I have the ability to do that for myself, it gives me the capacity to do it for someone else. I had a client who had a leader um who was really just messing up her team just because, and so she was called in, and she's pretty high up. When they get to her, it's bad. So
Mhm.
she went and had a meeting with her team and her, and she just asked some background information. So she asked the team, well, tell me about, are you close to your family? Everybody's, oh yes. Everybody on the team was close to their family, but the leader was not. She wasn't raised close to her family. So then she asked another question, and everybody in the team's like, "Oh, yes, we do that. We enjoy that." And the leader was like, "No, that's not a part of who I am. I don't understand that." So now she was like, she had a light bulb moment. Oh my gosh. No wonder why you are funny about time when they come in and when they don't. You're not even thinking about family. You're not even thinking about, because that's not her identity, her context, and her lens. You see what I'm saying? So when it comes to, empathy and the other pieces of your algorithm, capacity is really an important context to that. Understanding the person you're asking to engage with that understanding, their identity might not even have the capacity to even comprehend how to do that. Now we can get them to perform it. You do it or you fired. You can
Mhm.
perform it,
Mhm.
but to embody it is a whole different conversation. So yeah, identity impacts all of your algorithm because you can teach it, but it's the capacity of the people based on who they are and how they show up and how they engage with the information that makes the difference to their ability to increase their capacity to walk in it in leadership environments.
And as someone who preaches about all three of these things, I still find myself lacking empathy in the things in life that I am not
Yeah,
familiar
it's
with
not
or
your
don't
lived
understand.
experience.
And
Yeah,
so then I have to sit down and have a moment with self and be like, "Self, now, just because that is not your lived experience does not mean we don't show empathy to this person." And
right.
it turns
And
into
that's
a
a capacity, right? That is
it is.
a belief that you have chosen, which is an
Mhm,
identity narrative. Okay, I don't have the capacity for that. You're talking to yourself. I don't have the lived experience for that, but it does not mean that I cannot position myself to be available for that. But that goes back to identity. If you don't even have the narrative, the script to engage that, then you just have people looking at you blinking, right? Vulnerability is scary. It's
It
really, really
is.
scary in leadership environments. So, it's like where does that fit, right? How do we be available? Even maybe the language of what vulnerability means in certain environments and certain contexts. It doesn't mean that you're just butt naked booty blast in front of everybody and you
Mhm.
tell them all your business, but it does mean that you have a story and a way of engaging in a way that is available that doesn't make you look like you always get the answer and you never have a problem. So there's just this beautiful harmony to those conversations that is not even being taught anymore. It used to be a part of our cultural narrative and our family dynamics to teach those things through lived experience. But now you have millennials and Gen Zers who don't even know how to have relational context because they live on their phones. You see what I'm saying? So the work that you're doing is extremely important because you're really teaching humanity in a different way that was not groomed. Oh wow, what a different environment to bring a necessary conversation because people are engaging in their humanity, in their culture, even though they might not have been groomed to do that in their personal narratives. It's necessary.
So let's talk about adaptability. How does
Okay.
identity shape a leader's ability to adapt to disruptive change?
Adaptability and code switching. I had did a workshop and we talked about the difference between adaptability and code switching. It was a very fascinating conversation, and I was like, Adaptability is not code switching. Adaptability is I'm showing up as who I am, but I understand how to read the room." And everybody is not available to every context. And so I now have the ability to not only read the room, but I have the maturity to be able to see where people are and engage with them in the way that is necessary for the bigger picture. But I haven't changed who I am in order to do that. That's the difference.
Yes, code switching and adaptability. I would love to have that conversation because that is definitely something that we talk about a lot. Something I have definitely been guilty of myself, being in different environments. So, ooh, I bet that was a great conversation for
It
sure.
was, it was, and all of them were female leaders. They were African American leaders who were in, some of them were in male dominated environments. Some of them were approached that that they were maybe too aggressive or direct, or maybe they needed to change. And they felt that, that in some kind of way that was taking away from who they were and how they showed up. And then so we had to have the adaptability conversation because they thought that by, their definition of adaptability meant they couldn't be themselves. It was really, really, really good. And but it really led to the fact that I gave another example in your personal life. I said you have to think about people in different ways. I said, look at a house because we use the imagery of a house. And I said, you have some people who can handle you a certain way and you allow people into your space in certain ways and they're on the front porch. You have other people you can bring in the living room. There's some people you can bring to the kitchen, but everybody can't come to.
You're right. Everybody could not come to the kitchen. I remember you doing that at Lincoln's.
But it doesn't mean
That's
that
so
you're not
true.
who you are.
Mhm.
You just understand who you're dealing with. To me, it's an aspect of maturity. It's not code switching. I'm mature enough to understand who I'm dealing with. That's not code switching.
Definitely adaptability for sure. Okay, and the last piece is connection. So, what kind of connection is impossible without identity alignment, and why does it matter?
What kind of connection is impossible? I mean, I guess I think that can go back to our performance conversation, right? You can perform connection. I can smile at you and go, "Hello, how are you?" And they go turn around and close the door and go, "Hmm." You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, real connection only happens with the understanding and being okay that everybody is not your tea, but you can still deal with people who are not your tea. I can connect with people who are not my tea. I can connect with people who don't believe what I believe. You know what I'm saying? And have really sincere, great relationships and connections. But that comes with accepting that everybody is not like me. That comes with accepting my own difference, right? To me, it goes back to me. I understand that I'm unique. I understand that I'm different. I understand that my perspective and lens is not everyone's. And I own it and I appreciate what is unique and different about me. Me owning that for myself gives me the ability to give that to other people. I might not agree with you, but everybody's not going to agree with me. I mean, it's just almost a default. I don't like what you said, but everybody don't like what I said. It's always coming back. You know what I'm saying? To me. So my ability to recognize that in myself and know the ins and outs of myself, right? Knowing the good, the bad, the ugly, knowing what makes me not somebody wants to be around. I have to know the all of the intricacies of me to be able to accept them in someone else. And if I deny them in myself, I will deny them in you. If my lens of unity means that everybody has to be the same, I cannot see difference in you as acceptable because I don't see it as acceptable in myself. That context is really huge with regards to that's why I say, identity and uniqueness, difference is the new leadership strategy. If we can see it and work on it in ourselves, we have capacity for it now for everybody because I'm doing it for me. And if I don't do it for me, whatever my default is will be how I see the world. It will be how I see my leadership. It will be how I see my team. It'll be how I see what's right and what's wrong. I don't have the capacity to see anything else. Even though you might teach me something different, my default, who I am, will always override what information you give me that's different than what I've already accepted to be true.
That is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so for our last question, and this is a question that I give to everybody that comes on the podcast. What is one truth about women in leadership that the world isn't ready to hear, but absolutely needs to?
We're equal,
Or
period. Whether it's in a professional context, personal context, spiritual context, I am equal to you. I am not under you. I am not, I don't need to be rescued. I, um, I have strength and value, um, that needs to be brought to the table and needs to be honored and respected. I am equal, period. I am equal. And it doesn't matter if it's a woman's lens looking at it. Remember, we got to go back to people's context and belief. She might not even see herself as equal. She might see herself as subordinate. So therefore, she sees me in that same context, right? So, I mean, whether it's man, woman, it doesn't matter. I'm equal to you. And don't reduce who I am because of your lived experience.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, Dr. Kirkland, thank you
Yes.
for giving us such powerful language for the work that leaders must do internally and sustainably to lead others. Identity, like you said, is not soft work, it's strategic work. And the
Yes.
future belongs to leaders who really are aligned around it. So we courageously appreciate all your courageousness
Thank you.
that you have done with giving us the blueprint for the identity framework. And I am so excited that I got to have you on with us today. I'm just love all the work that you have done. You have definitely been influential in my life. I still, if I didn't have so much junk to the right of me that you can't see on camera, I would try. Oh, wait, hold on. I think I can make it. There was a beautiful I am the gift
Yeah.
journal that you gave us, and it's got her beautiful face on the back with a
Thank
that
you.
I do use it, as you can see. I've been well, now you get to look at this, but I have
Yeah.
been using it. It sits right here on my desk because the journaling process is also something that we didn't get a chance to talk about today, but is so important to just mapping out what you want your identity.
Yes.
It has been really helpful in me and all the thousands of things that I've tried to implement this year and plan to implement next year. So thank you for the work that you're doing. It is needed.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
All righty. Well, next time you will be back, I'm sure, because we got a lot more work to do. You gave me about 16 other podcast ideas.
I love it. I love it.
Thank you so much for being on with us today.
Thank you so much.
One,